All right, so this is an open panel discussion. Each member here, Nick and Steve, are going to give their top points on what they see is happening in the business world, as well as some real-life world examples. And then what we'd like to do is open it up, and hopefully you have some very complicated and direct questions about cyber risk and cyber insurance. And so we'd like to open it up with that. Following that, we will have a moment where our good friend Fred Sievert here will give his testimony, and then we will move towards a little bit of a networking time. But with that, I'd like, Nick, would you like to start?
Sure. Well, good morning. It's an honor to be up here. I've sat at these tables many times before, so to be able to present is a big privilege. So as Adrian said, I was invited to come up here to talk about cyber insurance. And so my goal here this morning is to probably leave you more confused and scared than how you arrived. You may feel that way. There will probably be a lot of information that's thrown at you. But Steve and I will try to do it in a way that's very palatable and give you practical solutions that you can come away with to better be prepared. Better be prepared in the cyber landscape. And so what is cyber insurance? Cyber insurance is simply a policy that is designed to help businesses deal with the financial and legal consequences of a cyber incident. So it's a standalone policy. You might be able to get some coverage on your general liability policy. I'll talk about that later, but for the purposes of our discussion, I'll be talking more so about a individual policy that you will be using to help you with the cyber landscape. And so why is that important? Why should you look into getting a independent cyber policy? One thing is that the threats of the cyber landscape are increasingly costly and prevalent. Just last month, and I'm sure Steve could speak to it, we had our largest cyber attack on record with companies like Meta, Apple, Google, Telegram. They all got hit. Your logins, your emails, they were all leaked, and the number of records was the largest that we've ever seen. And so the cyber landscape is increasingly risky. And so that's especially pertinent to us as small to medium-sized business owners. If these titans of data are getting hit with cyber attacks and your information is getting out, odds are your small to medium-sized business in Southeast Michigan is going to be a target as well. If you think these large Fortune 500 companies who have pretty much all the money in the world to be able to defend against this, they're still getting hit. So what does that mean for us? We'll get into that in a second. The other is that it offers financial protection for you. If you get into a cyber incident, those get very costly very quickly. And the largest claims that we're seeing in our office right now are cyber claims. They happen in an instant, and the costs escalate very quickly. And that's one reason why what Steve does is so important, is because detection is very important. Cyber incidents tend to be kind of like a cancer. If you catch them in time, you can minimize a lot of the effects, a lot of the costs. But on average, according to IBM, it takes about 292 days for a cyber incident to be detected. So that's about 8 months. Like Adrian said, we're expecting our first child. That's almost the amount of time that it takes to grow a baby. Like, that's a very long time. And so if you're not detecting it, your costs are growing, and you don't even know it. There's something infested in your system causing a lot of issues, and you think, you're putting your head down on the pillow at night and, everything's great, but it's not. And another great benefit of a cyber policy is that they're going to quarterback the whole process for you. If you have a claim, you'll call them and they'll take over. They'll walk you through from A to Z on exactly what you need to do. So there's a lot of benefits in there. So let's get into some of the coverages there. And I like to systematize things. That helps me conceptualize what I'm trying to think through. So for the coverages, there's 4 main categories of coverages on a cyber policy. First would be first-party coverages, third-party coverages, cyber crime, and then business income. So those are the 4 major categories of coverage. So we'll start off with the first party coverages. And those are going to be the direct costs that you are incurring by having a cyber incident. So first off would be notifications. You're going to have to notify your clients, your employees, your partners, your vendors that you've been hit. And especially if their information has been stolen, you're going to have to notify them that their information has been stolen, what's been stolen. And so at a minimum, that's going to be a mail letter that's going to go out. And then if it's a huge claim, if you're a larger company, but potentially a call center would have to be set up so people can call in to help. So notification is huge. Another one would be credit monitoring services. So if their information was stolen, you're going to have to provide credit monitoring so that they can see if their information that was stolen is being nefariously used against them to open up accounts, to try to get a loan, something like that. You're going to have to provide that. That's very costly. Another would be forensics. So you're going to have a network forensics team come in, and they're going to have to investigate the cause and the scope of the attack that happened. How did they get in? Where was the vulnerability? How do we patch that? What was the scope? What exactly did they take? What was sent out potentially on the dark web where anybody could buy it and pick it up? In addition to that, you'll have restoration costs. So you'll have to pay to either restore, recover, or replace data that was stolen, systems that were taken down or damaged. That gets very expensive very quickly. And then related to that is you're going to have a lot of PR issues. You're going to have a lot of upset customers, a lot of upset vendors and suppliers that you work with saying, how could you let this happen? So you're going to have PR. You're going to have increased advertising costs to help minimize the pain from that incident. And then you're also going to have ransomware costs and extortion fees. You know, if they got into your system and they locked it down, or they took your data and said, hey, pay us so much and we'll give this back to you, you're going to have to pay that. You're going to have to pay for somebody to negotiate on your behalf. And that's where the insurance company would come in with quarterbacking the claim, is that they're going to have professionals that are trained to negotiate on your behalf in these instances. And then there would also be legal fees. You'll have to have legal counsel, and you'll have potentially fines coming down, either on a state or a federal level, especially if there's HIPAA information that has been lost. So those are the first party coverages, and that's not an exhaustive list, but that is a lot of the heavy hitters that you would probably run into if there's a cyber incident. And so now we'll move on to the third-party costs, and third-party costs are direct costs that are happening to someone else because of your claim. So they're incurring damages, then because of that, now they're coming back against you to remediate their problem and to recoup their costs. And so with that, you have legal defense and settlement costs. So you're going to have legal fees. People are going to come back against you in the court of law and say, hey, you were negligent in this area. You caused me damage, and now you have to make me whole again. And there's also going to be coverage for liability for transmitting malware. You could potentially pass on a compromised file that you don't know of, and somebody else opens it, and then they have a cyber incident. So it would provide liability coverage for you to protect your liability and unknowingly passing on something that could affect a company. And then also with that, there's media liability, and this one's becoming increasingly important. Many of you may not have known, but Elmo's Twitter account was hacked this past week. And so the official Twitter account for Elmo was hacked, and somebody was making defamatory statements and just foul stuff because somebody hacked their account. And so somebody could get into your company's social media account, get access to your website, and maybe put out defamatory language. They could put out proprietary information. So especially if you have larger contracts, say with the big three, and you leak vehicle information that has not been made public yet, they could do that to damage your brand, to damage you financially. It would provide liability costs for that. So those are the third-party costs of somebody else's damaged because of what happened to you, and then they're coming back against you. So the next one would be coverage category is cyber crime, and these are the fraudulent coverages. So first with that would be computer fraud. So someone is getting into your system and using your system to defraud someone else. So I have a claim example for that is that we had a tech company that was doing work with their law firm. And so they're emailing back and forth. Their law firm was giving them counsel and advice. And eventually they got to the end of their services and sent the IT company an invoice for their services. And somebody was in the law firm system monitoring these emails going back and forth. And as soon as they saw that invoice, then they knew it was their time to shine, and they jumped in and sent an email to the IT company and said, hey, for that invoice we just sent you, send the payment to such and such account number at such and such routing number, and we'll be good. And they were in the law firm's system, so it came from their domain. A lot of times you can usually kind of spot a phishing email. It's like john1377fish@gmail.com. And you're like, okay, that's probably not who I was just doing business with. But when it's in their system and it's coming from their domain, it's really hard to tell that this is actually a fraudulent email. And so the IT company, you'd think an IT company is very on top of it, but they just don't know because it looked very legit. And so they ended up forwarding the money over to that new account. Then the law firm calls, says, hey, did you pay that invoice yet? Yeah, what do you mean? We sent it over last week. We've got nothing. Oh, no. And so that would be an instance of computer fraud coverage where somebody is using your systems to defraud somebody else. So the law firm would have had cyber coverage, so their computer fraud coverage would have stepped in for the fraud that was happening on behalf of their systems. Another coverage for cyber crime is funds transfer fraud. And so this would be where somebody is defrauding an institution such as your bank to send funds on your behalf. So maybe they get your login credentials and go to your bank, and your bank doesn't know any different because it's your credentials saying, hey, send such and such amount to this address. I want to do a wire transfer, and then the money gets sent. So they're using your identity, your credentials to fraudulently transfer money somewhere else for the criminals. And another cybercrime coverage is social engineering fraud. Most of us are probably familiar with these types of fraudulent activities. This would be something such as like a phishing email, and that they are trying to trick you into sending money somewhere else. And so this is closely related to computer fraud. It's two different sides of the same coin. So you're getting a fraudulent email saying, hey, please send money to such and such, and then your accountant or your account manager at the office, they wire the money over because it looks like it's something legit for somebody that you usually transfer money for. And so those are the fraud coverages, the cyber crime coverages. And then lastly, we have the business income coverages. And so with the business income coverages, there's business interruption coverage, and this will pay for lost income and additional expenses due to direct losses from a cyber incident that's happening to you. So if you do have a cyber incident, odds are your operations are going to be paused for a while. Your systems are going to be down. You're not really going to be able to do much. And so with that, you are losing revenue. But the world's still spinning, the sun's still rising, your expenses still need to be paid. You've got employee salaries that need to be paid. You've got mortgages, leases, utility bills, the whole shot. Those things don't stop just because your business stopped. The world still keeps going. So this business interruption coverage will pay to keep your revenue going so that you can still maintain your employees' payrolls, your bills that need to be paid, so you're not falling behind. And closely related to that, and this is a really important coverage, is dependent business interruption. So business interruption coverage will kick in if you're having a direct loss to you in a cyber incident. But what happens if one of your key vendors or your suppliers are having an incident happen to them and you're relying on them for your business operations to keep going? This is where dependent business interruption coverage would come in and pay for your business operations to keep going when they're paused because someone else is having an interruption and it's pausing your operations. So it does the same thing as business interruption, but it's when it's affecting someone else and not you. And that's a really important coverage. It's becoming increasingly important as we have a connected business world. And not all cyber policies have that coverage available. So that's a really important one to keep an eye out for, especially if you do have a cyber policy, to make sure that you do have dependent business interruption. And then the other main business income coverage is for the reputational harm. So if you do have an incident, you're going to have to let people know that you had an incident. They're not probably going to trust you as much as what they did before. If you can't keep their name, their address, their email safe, they might not want to do business with you anymore. And so this will help pay to keep your revenue at the same level that it was before the incident. And then once the coverage tails off, hopefully you've been able to build your book of business back up to where it was before. And so those are the main coverages on a cyber policy. I know that's kind of a lot, but hopefully it helps you kind of digest all that a cyber policy is able to do for you with first-party coverages, third-party coverages, cyber crime, and business income. I know it's a lot, but cyber coverage is very complex. There's a lot of triggers that could happen for coverage, and it's by far the most complex coverage that we write in the agency. And so with all that, do I actually need it? So who would actually need a cyber policy? And I would say any small to medium-sized business, like I mentioned before, these huge companies are being hit. And so a lot of small businesses tend to have the posture of, well, I'm not Facebook. Why would anybody want to come after me? What do I have to offer? But they know that a lot of us think that way. And so they know that we're easy targets because we don't have a lot of the proper protections in place or coverage in place. And so Barracuda Networks, they came out with a study and said that small to medium-sized businesses face 350 times more social engineering attempts than large businesses do. And that's quite a lot. That's a huge swing. And so we have to be vigilant as small business owners to make sure that we're on top of this, because we are a huge target out there. Another reason why is if you deal with any personal identifiable information, personal financial information, or personal health information, you're a target, because those are the three types of information that cyber criminals really want to get a hold of, because they can sell that for easy money on the dark web. And even if you don't do a lot of personal information with your clients, you probably have personal information on your employees. You probably have their names, their address, maybe even emergency contacts. You probably have their bank information because you got to send their paychecks somewhere. So you probably have a lot of that information on your own employees. And your own employees' records tend to be more expensive to recover than client records. And also, if you do any business on a computer, on the internet, you might not collect a lot of data, but if you send emails, that's where the cyber fraud could come in, the cyber crime. If you do any sort of online banking. So if you use a computer in any way, you're susceptible to a number of those coverage triggers that could happen. And so, again, it's increasingly important. A lot of us don't like to think that something bad will happen. It's kind of like thinking about death, but it's unfortunately, a cyber incident is now a matter of when, not if. And I'm sure Steve could speak to that. These criminals are very cunning, and they're constantly adapting. That's why we have constant updates on our phone and our laptops, is because these companies are trying to stay ahead of the game to keep us safe.
So with that, Steve, how would we protect ourselves?
Is this one on? Well, thanks for the easy question, Adrian. How do we protect ourselves? That is seriously a very challenging question. It's a layered defense approach, right? I tell new clients that the easiest way to guarantee their security is to go into their network closet and cut that little yellow cable that connects their servers to the internet. We can't really do that. So we have to have a layered approach. We would call that defense in depth. So giving you guys some actionable cybersecurity advice this morning is really my goal, okay? I don't want to get too technical pending any direct questions. I want to try to give you things that you can take home and really implement in your businesses. So I don't really view cybersecurity as directly as an IT challenge. I view it as a leadership challenge. Security starts with the leadership. It starts with the tone that you set in your organization. Having strong password policies, enforcing good practices, things like that, those are the easy things, the low-hanging fruit that we as business owners can ensure that we're implementing across our organizations. And they don't even cost us any real money. So looking at kind of the 80% of the results from 20% of your effort, taking some time to meet with an IT consultant, making sure that they are a cybersecurity expert. The guys that are replacing your keyboards are not the same as the guys that are configuring and protecting your firewalls. And you can't firewall your way out of a phishing attack. It's training, it's awareness, it's really getting all of the right people in the room speaking the same language and coming up with a plan. And we would call that an incident response plan. So by preparing for the worst, we can ensure our protections because we rehearse them. We get our incident response plans together, and then we know, okay, in the event of an incident, whether that's a data breach or ransomware or any of the umpteen other cyber breaches or incidents that are capable, getting that plan in place, rehearsing it, working with your insurance agent, working with your legal team, working with your HR department, working with your IT company, so that everybody knows what their role is in an incident, and then wargaming that truthfully and honestly and openly. When you go through that as a simulated exercise, it's much less likely to happen in the first place because you're going to identify some of those gaps in your security. You're going to identify some of those weaknesses in the social elements, in the human element of it. So it's your culture of cyber awareness starts at the top. The tone that you set, the organization will follow that. So it's very critical that we have a security focus. And that we're looking at things like password managers, because the number of times that we walk in, and boy, if that person's not at their computer, I can almost guarantee if I flip their computer over, somewhere in that building, I'm getting the password and I'm getting into the system. We don't want people writing their passwords on sticky notes. Yeah, I know, tell me about it. See me later. We want to have good password management policies and multi-factor authentication. Those two things alone can block over 80% of cyber incidents. And that's, speaking as somebody that performs DFIR, insurance agencies call the Callisto Group in and say, our client had an incident, and we've got to go in, we've got to find out where it came from. We've got to find out how they got in. What did they gain access to? And then how are we going to remediate that and get them back into operations as quickly and efficiently as possible? Because that's the goal, return to business operations. So 80% of those attacks could be stopped by simply having good password policies and multi-factor authentication. If I can't convince the system that I'm you, I can't intercept and inject myself. The example of being in that legal team's email system and being able to send an authenticated email from their domain, that's the end game of any hacker out there. They have authenticated access. They can do whatever they want. They can impersonate whoever they want. The rest of it, the nick37@phish.com, and I love that example because it'll say the name of who they want you to think it is, right? But when you look at the headers in there, or you look at where the messages are actually coming from, it's what we would call spoofed. So they're just trying to trick you. So it's easy enough to trick people, but man, when you can convince them because you're sending an authenticated, legitimate email, that's even worse. So getting those protections in place, preventing that access into your systems in the first place, that's key. Everybody says that the best offense is Oh, I went the wrong way with it. Yeah, good defenses, and I was actually looking for having the Callisto Group as your cybersecurity partner. So you've got to have those experts in there that are looking at that holistically, because, I mean, everybody's got, an IT guy or an IT company, internal or external outsourced. They're not all created equally. We challenge our clients to get third-party audits. We want somebody else checking and making sure that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing and that all of those holes are plugged. And we do the same thing for other MSPs out there. We'll have relationships. Hey, I'll audit your clients, you audit mine. Let's keep each other honest. You've got to have those people looking at these systems because it is such an evolving landscape. It's different every year. We're not doing the same things. And so you probably heard that cybersecurity is a journey, not a destination, and it's true because they change the goalpost every year. The attacks have changed. They're evolving. You know, we heard about ransomware for so long. We don't hear much about ransomware anymore because they're moving directly into extortion, and oftentimes double extortion. They've got your client's data. They know they've got their client's data. They're not even calling you and asking you for money anymore. They're calling your client and saying, hey, we just got your data from Acme Manufacturing. What would you like us to do with it? So you're even losing the attempt to negotiate those things. So having those defenses in place, that is critical. And getting an honest security assessment, picking a security framework and managing to it. If you're working with the Department of Defense supply chain in any capacity, you know you need CMMC. If you're working with anybody in the medical, if you are medical, you know you've got HIPAA compliance that you've got to deal with. Manufacturing has all sorts of frameworks that you can pick and choose from, and it doesn't really matter which one it is, as long as you pick one and manage to it. Having a partner that can come in, audit, and analyze where are you today, what's it going to take to get you to compliance, and then maintain that. And the last thing I want to say on compliance is that really is the basement. Being compliant and getting your compliance certification means you've met the minimum standards required to maintain that compliance. It doesn't mean that you're still as secure as you could be. So that compliance is a great starting point, but you've got to make sure you've got those layered defenses, that you've got advanced tools. Everybody likes to talk about AI right now. It's an exciting topic. The Callisto Group's involved in multiple conversations. We're doing a lot of webinars. We're on panels where we're talking about ethics in AI and how it relates to businesses leveraging these new technologies and doing it safely and smartly, and making sure that we keep that human element in there. But the human element, that's our weakest point. That's why everything is phishing. That's why everything is passwords. Your employees, intentionally or unintentionally, are the second largest threat vector to your business. The first largest threat vector is me, your managed IT service provider, right? Because if you've got an IT company that's remotely supporting you, we've got access to everything. If we're not secure, if we're not following a compliance framework, if we're not doing the right things and getting all of our certifications and having our audits completed internally, we're a major threat to your business. So vendor risk management is critical for cybersecurity. It's critical for making sure that you know what your employees are doing, you're influencing that culture, you're driving change and enforcing security. But if you're letting vendors in through the back door and assuming that because they have IT in their name that they know what they're doing, that's a huge hole that you need to analyze and plug. And the best way to do that, excuse me, is to have a third-party audit and look at what you've got going on right now and what could be improved.
So Steve, real quick, so does everybody here understand what multi-factor authentication is?
Yes, it's annoying.
I like that. It can be annoying. It can be.
Does everyone here have it on every device possible? Nope.
Well, let me tell you how annoying it is for me, because I have access into 10,000 computers at any given moment from my cell phone. So for me to have multi-factor authentication, that's critical. And if I want to do it, I get a little ding, a green button, and a red button. And if it was me, I push the green button. If it wasn't me, I push the red button. And it's that simple. I don't have to type in any characters. I don't have to put a 32-character password in for anything. I don't use passwords. I operate on a zero trust principle, which means I don't know the password. You could put a gun to me and tell me that if I don't give you the password, you're going to take me out. I couldn't give it to you. I don't have it. I use multi-factor authentication and biometric encryption for everything that I do. And it's cheap and it's easy. I don't have to remember passwords. I push green buttons. If I can do that, you can do that. And it's not in the way. When we deploy this at clients, they can't believe how easy it is to get into their computer because they don't even have to remember that 32-character password that their IT department makes them change every 6 months. So no, there he's on the 3-week policy.
So what is required of anybody in this room and or their extended network to become compliant in order to be able to have an insurance policy?
That's a joint question, Nick. You want to?
Sure. Every company is different on how they handle that. Some a few years ago used to make you sign an attestation saying that you do have MFA on your devices, but there was a lot of difficulty with that because not everybody had it on the device itself, and so they might have it, on their Microsoft 365 suite. So when they go into Outlook, they have to approve it on their phone, but on their device itself, it didn't have MFA. So, I mean, it varies. So I guess it's somewhat of a non-answer, but it just depends on what carrier you're actually with, and they might have specific requirements. But
I'd like to add to that just a little bit. So, who here has filled out a checklist for cyber liability insurance? Who here has had anybody actually come and say, okay, show me where that's true? A couple, good. A lot of times you don't, right? You're signing on the dotted line that says that what you say is true. The carrier's not coming and verifying that you have multi-factor everywhere. So a lot of times, if you don't really understand the question and you're answering it the best that you can, and I know a lot of us, sometimes we come across forms and we don't really understand it, so we do the best we can. And so unintentionally, you're putting incorrect information. Because having multi-factor for your Microsoft 365 is not the same as having multi-factor everywhere across your organization, and that's really the difference. I can have multi-factor required for my email, but if I don't have it required for my computer, my phone, all the things that access my email, once I've authenticated once, Microsoft does not require your multi-factor to go off every time you access it. Microsoft Security Defaults lets Microsoft's AI determine when it thinks that token needs to be exchanged for your convenience, and it's pretty smart, but it's not perfect. So it's one single layer of defense. And I would advise that you have your IT company evaluate that policy because you can change it. So if you're in a sensitive industry, require it every single time, not when Microsoft thinks that you should. But simple questions like that on those checklists. Do you have this? Do you have this? You may feel you have it. You may have the spirit or intent of it. But if you don't have it everywhere, you're vulnerable. And that's how I have seen claims be denied. Because, well, you said right here that you have multi-factor. Well, I do on this one little thing over here. Well, that's not what was affected. You don't have multi-factor on all of your systems and servers. So making sure that you're working with a partner, an insurance agency that can look through there and really understand and walk you through that, an IT partner that can understand exactly what is needed to make sure that when it gets questioned, you know you're right. A legal team that understands the ins and outs of that, an HR team that can handle the fact that, you had an incident. Everybody has incidents these days. We've got T-shirts. It's not if, it's when. We said that, and I can't stress enough how true that is. The big guys are getting it. The little guys get it even more. We said 350% difference. Statistics that I have show that over 80% of current ransomware attacks, even though they are on the decline, they are targeting the small business. Because we don't have $1 million to throw at top-of-the-line next-gen firewalls in every broom closet. We don't have teams of 100 people that are just sitting there watching the data go across the network. So how do you get access to those things? You have to do what scales to your business, right? Work with a partner that can give you fractional services, that can monitor your networks in real time, ensure that those protections are in place, and actually allow you to check those boxes knowing that what you're saying is true and that when you have an incident, your claim will be honored and that you're going to be able to recover. Because cybersecurity incidents are door-closing, resume-generating events. They will shut you down.
Well, just to add on that really quickly, we also encourage all of our clients to work with a company like Callisto Group. Talk to their cybersecurity team, their managed IT provider, to help them with those applications because they tend to be fairly in-depth, and you're worried about your employees doing your day-to-day business. You don't really know what endpoint detection is. You may have a basic idea of what multi-factor authentication is. So we always encourage our clients to talk with whoever they're using for their cybersecurity or IT services to walk them through that, because it is such a process and your answers do matter. So Callisto Group could definitely help you with that.
And your claims can be denied if you provide false information. Even if you said, like, your spirit or the spirit of what you've been trying to do is to be protected, if a claim happens, you may not be covered if it was inaccurate information.
Yeah.
So how important is it for everyone in here, because most people are going to be small businesses, to really make this a priority in their company? Like, what is the percentage risk here? You said 360 times more likely for a small business to be hit. If they ask for $10,000 to a small business is a lot of money. So we have been personally hit. We went through it, and it changed the way we operate our business. We had one person, we had one person in the entire company that we missed that didn't have the MFA on their email. It had it on everything else except for Outlook, and somehow we missed it. And we had the same situation that happened between an accounting firm and us. And the accounting firm paid somebody from a third world country our bill. It's really important. I can't stress it enough, because we have been personally impacted by this, and it hurts. And it doesn't matter how much money it is, you do have a sense of violation that somebody's in your business, right? And so it's really an important aspect of securing a business and the future of your business, especially if you're in a position of scaling up, where your risk factors multiply with the volume of people that you have on staff, the volume of vendors, the volume of clients, etc. This type of action and to mitigate against it is critically important. So with that, we have just about 5 minutes. Are there any particular questions that you guys would like to ask?
I got one. So how do we determine, we're educated on the phishing emails and to look for the domain and where the email is coming from. But how do we determine on the attacks in text messages? Because now there's scams with text messages. And case in point, I was getting a text message, I don't know, maybe every couple weeks, and it was saying that I had some sort of parking ticket, click here to pay it. And I was like, okay, whatever, this is a scam. Because it didn't say my name, it didn't say where the ticket was from, it had like a weird link to a website that, the link didn't make any sense, and so I ignored it. A couple weeks later, I actually got a parking ticket in the mail. It was from the city of Royal Oak. It was a $20 parking ticket, and in the letter it said to go to that exact same website and pay the ticket. And so then, when I got that, it kind of flipped my world upside down, because I'm going, oh my gosh, this was actually a legit, text message that I got. So it looked fake though. So how do we spot in text messages what's real and what's not?
Yeah, and the easy answer to that, and it's not a great answer, admittedly, right? But the easy answer is security awareness training in general. So excellent that you highlight we've been trained to look for phishing emails, and we're trained to look for some of the telltale signs of that. It's just diligence, right? So if I received a text message that I wasn't expecting, whether it's legitimate or not, I'm not compelled to click on that. I have no official correspondence from that. I'm going to question it. So I tell people, if you're not sure, don't click on it. And if you really want to know, call them. Call where that would come from. And you're not going to get a lot of that information in some of these text messages, but that looked suspicious and was legitimate. Who's gotten one of the, they're going to take your driver's license away if you don't pay your toll, Yeah, thankfully they've put on the billboards now that, hey, that is a scam, don't do that, don't call that. But it's awareness and it's training. So it's just knowing that if you haven't engaged with them via text message, then if it is legitimate, it's because you're opted into something somewhere. So it could be legitimate, but you're not compelled to click on that. You don't have to. So if you don't trust it, don't click on it. And if you want to make sure, hey, maybe I did get a parking ticket, call the city and see if you got a parking ticket. But that's a tough one because attacks are so sophisticated now, they know to build them like that. And I'll take that. So it's lucky that that was a legitimate, sorry for your parking ticket, but it's good that it was a legitimate thing. We have a business that we work with. When we first started onboarding with them, they weren't even fully into our systems yet. Got an email from the owner saying, hey, I was just sending an email to my team this morning about this thing that's going to be coming down the pipeline from National that hasn't come yet, but now there's an email being sent to all of my team to click into the thing to sign up for that. Somebody was in their system and had been in their system for over 6 months. And we just took them on and we're just getting started. So we don't have all of our tools deployed in there. We don't know everything that's going on yet. There had been somebody in that system monitoring the communication. So they knew the change was coming. They read all of the internal leadership communication. They created a new website with a new domain meant to look like what was legitimately happening, sent it to their employees. Little, kudos to us because one of the tools we did get deployed was our mail defense system. So when somebody clicked on that link, our mail defense system saw that it was a malicious link and blocked it. And that's the only way that we found out was that email from the owner and then correlating that to the block traffic. And then we were able to shut all of that down. But they're very sophisticated. And if they can get any intelligence, because I would say it's possible that you did get a parking ticket and it was a bad text because maybe that city has been compromised and their systems are compromised, right? And this is where having those coverages and having that third-party stuff is also so critical.
And I'll say this real quick because we're limited on time. So we'll do 2 really quick questions. She's stretching it out? No, she's not stretching it out.
Yeah. We're not going to do the networking. We're not going to
Yep,
have time for that.
perfect.
So we have until 9:30. So if you go
Okay.
until about 9:15.
Perfect. Thank you. I'll say this. One of the changes that we made with our accounting staff is nobody pays a bill from somebody who gets an email that says, here's my new banking information, without picking up the phone. We have these telephones that people are having a very hard time using these days. They like text and they like email. Pick up the phone. Hey, I got this email saying your banking information has changed. Is this legitimate? So making a playbook or something within you and your staff to understand you do not transfer banking information at all without picking up the phone to verify it.
So, just last week, I go into my email and overnight, 3 in the morning, there's like 4 emails from LinkedIn. Hey, good news, we changed your password, click here to fix it. Oh yeah, we added a new email. Oh, we added another secondary level of security, da-da-da-da. And I'm like, well, that wasn't me. So I click into what looks like LinkedIn and it's like, here's your multi-factor authentication coming to my email. Yep, oh, now here's the secondary. I didn't set it up in advance. I can't do. Oh no, if you don't have access to this, scan this code with your mobile phone, and I might ask you to take a selfie and give you scan a copy of your driver's license. And I'm like, okay.
You just get your social security number and your credit card ready. Yeah.
I don't know how stupid people are out there, but I'm like, this, so I'm locked out of LinkedIn. I guess I just set up a new account, but you try to go always asking for the secondary level, and if you didn't set it up in advance, here's how to fix it after. And it's like, no, I don't like biometric at all. Maybe I'm old school from the 1900s, but that seems like, well, what the hell, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it becomes an advertisement for Clear on LinkedIn. If you do you're a certified member, all of a sudden you start getting emails from Clear. So it's clear that
Yeah.
So you can get to the airport quicker. That's the reason why you did multi-factor authentication on LinkedIn.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and there's a lot of stuff like that, and that's where, like we talked about, looking at the links in there and verifying that you sent it. If you get an email that says, "Hey, congratulations, your password's been reset," don't click anything. Call your IT department, okay? Because you're going to create a bad situation for yourself by either granting access to your accounts or locking yourself out of your accounts. Double down, yeah.
Quick little story about my neighbor used to play online poker for the small businesses, and he seemed to be winning. And I said, well, if you're winning on online poker, why don't you play higher stakes and win twice as much? And he said, then I'll be playing against people who know what they're doing, and I won't win. I like to play against, so I said, it's the small businesses are the ones that they don't have anything in place. They're the suspects. They're at risk.
Peter?
Yeah, so this one's for Nick. I do have one for Steve as well. So Nick, you mentioned different levels of coverage, right? Those were, I'm guessing you started at the lowest level, right, and kept working on those are all different policies specifically?
No,
Or are they all inclusive in yeah, give me a feel for that. And then I got a follow-up question.
Yeah. I was just kind of creating 4 different categories to kind of synthesize everything. So you're going to have first-party coverages, third-party coverages, cyber crime, and then business income. That's kind of like the overarching, just how you can kind of formalize what a cyber policy would probably cover. Yeah, if they're on your policy. But not every policy is created equal. And so that's why it really matters what carrier you're going with, having an experienced agent working for you and to be able to get you a good policy with a good company to make sure that it has the right coverages.
Carrier for your client to make sure they get the right carrier for that, for what they need.
Yeah, we're an independent agency, so we represent a multitude of different carriers. So that gives us a lot of flexibility for premiums and coverage to see what best fits you.
Yeah, because I had a client of mine had switched to a title company. They had switched to another provider of whatever that provider did for their title. And about 3 weeks into the transition, that new company got a ransomware, held all of their data. They couldn't process titles. Luckily, they still had backup, so they went to paper. But what I don't know is if they had that. I'm thinking what they would have needed was the dependent business integration, right, for the losses that they incurred because of that. That's the level they probably would have needed.
So you're saying the other company had the loss? What's that? You're saying the other company had the loss, not your client?
My client had the loss because they had so much being held.
Yeah, if your client's being directly attacked, then their business interruption coverage would pay to keep their revenues where they should have been.
And I've heard it said that one of the most important things you can do is actually just read your policy and understand. Because I discovered that my general liability policy would not be enough. And you assume because you have insurance, you have the right insurance. That is not true.
Yeah, and that's kind of why I was going with Nick on this, is because it's so important that you have the right insurance person that's going to do that research for you. Ideally independent. I'm not, if anyone's a hostage insurance provider, I apologize. Ideally, I apologize, no. But ideally, the independent insurance providers are able to shop way better than anybody. I think that's correct.
Correct, yeah. And to Adrian's point, probably most of you have some level of cyber coverage on your general liability policy, but they're really giving you probably very low limits. And there's a small scope of coverage that's actually on there. So if you're a sole proprietor or you have very minimal employees, you're a very small operation, that might be enough. But even then, you should still probably get an independent cyber policy because that's going to give you a larger, broader amount of coverages like I went through that will be available to you rather than just a small limit on your GL. A lot of people think, oh yeah, I do have cyber coverage, and then we take a look at it, and it's a couple peanuts on their general liability. It's really nothing. It's just kind of a general courtesy that they throw on there to make you feel a little bit better, so you can sleep a little bit better. But we really should be having independent cyber policies.
I still got the mic. All right, cool. So Steve, it's so easy just to use, right? One, I always had the same password for years on everything I did. I've gone away from that. I really have, I promise.
Oh, yeah,
No,
and what's
I
the-
have a new technique, which actually could be discovered as well, in my guy, right? Not that, right, I'm not big enough for an XP, obviously. Sure. Had said, even the Google, like, Google, allowing Google to save your passwords is a bad idea.
Yeah.
And he really encouraged me to go over to Bitwarden.
Sure.
And not do all the you just, because it's so much easier when I just let Google do it. So now I'm using Bitwarden, and I have to put in a sentence once in a while, right? Because it does have a password, which I don't like doing. I'd way rather have no password.
Absolutely.
So what would you recommend?
So using Google to store your password's a bad idea if the rest of your accounts are not secure. So the weakest link in the chain is what's always going to get you, right? So if you're using encryption and you're using good password policies and you're doing everything right, saving a password in Google, not necessarily a terrible idea, but I would look at what are you saving in there. So put your business data in a business tool. Enterprise-grade encryption, enterprise-grade password management, where everything's encrypted end-to-end. Google does use encryption. However, your computer can be the weak point because maybe you don't have your laptop's hard drive encrypted. Maybe you don't have the best security practices in place locally. All somebody needs to do is get access to that device. If you're already logged in and authenticated, there's no protection. If they were trying to get into it from the cloud, accessing your Google account from another location, that's a little tougher. There's security there. But you become the weak link because your Google device already knows that, hey, if you're opening Google, we're ready to go. It's not asking you every single time to authenticate.
Steve, what size businesses do you typically work with?
Well, we have everybody from a solopreneur up to 500 and plus employees. We do have solo. Our sweet spot is that 25 to 100, somewhere in there tends to be the best spot. But yeah, even the little guys. I got a sweet old lady that runs a baking business, and her son was adamant that she had some security. So we do some very basic stuff for her, and she's got a password manager because she is the sort that will click on that link, and bad things will happen. And her son wanted to make sure that she was protected, so we have some very basic online protections in place. Password management it's cost effective for your employees. There are great tools out there, and I could recommend several. There's not just one that does this well, but getting something that allows your entire team to share passwords securely is invaluable. My people can share passwords back and forth with each other, and they never even know what the password is. They don't get to see it. They can't interact with it. They can't change it. But we can give them authenticated access through identity access management, which is a higher level of this. But all of these tools exist. They're very cost effective. And the fact that those tools stop the vast majority of these attacks from happening in the first place, it's almost a no-brainer.
Thank you, Steve.
I was kind of curious, probably, I'm not an IT person at all, but probably the most common MFA is you talk about it as one of us goes to a bank account or any kind of account and it sends a 6-digit code to our cell phone, right? How secure are the cell phone networks? If somebody doesn't know Joe's cell phone number, so they can impersonate that out in that system and get that code. How do they stop that? What's the story on that? When will we no longer be able to do the 6-digit input to get into our PNC account and be secure?
So those 6-digit codes have a risk. It's an accepted risk because in order to intercept those codes, you need like NSA level things happening, okay? So if the government wants your one-time passcode to chase, they're probably gonna get it. But you would have to clone a SIM. You'd have to be in the same encrypted connection to the site that's attempting to authenticate. You'd have to put that code in within the timeline before it expires. So a lot of things would have to happen. So it is a relatively secure way to do it. That's why banks still allow that to happen. Banks do have tighter integrations. If you have Duo, you can integrate Duo with your bank and get push notifications and bypass that. But it has its risks, but they are considered a very low risk, and it is definitely, it's still prolific, and I don't see it going away anytime soon. Absolutely, yeah.
I have time for one more question. Yes. Joel?
Yeah, so I just kind of wanted to make a comment and add to Steve what you're talking about. We can never rely as companies on our IT staff, the guys that are down in the weeds giving us technical controls to say that you just have MFA or you have this or you have a firewall. We can't rely on that to say that that is making us fully secure. There's a lot more to that, which is our education and how we practice cybersecurity hygiene. And the tools are just tools. Even MFA, we know, can be hacked, right? People can, a man in the middle can grab our security token through MFA and mimic that and take over our sessions. So it's a matter of, you can trust your IT guy, but there's a lot more to it. And to Steve's point, the learning and the education is the first step in that process. Putting controls in is another step. Practicing, creating good policies to adhere to. And this is all stuff that things would change our daily lives and how we do things and what we do, and there's inconveniences and there's new education changes. Those things are important to get us to that level of good cybersecurity, hygiene, and maturity, which then some of the more advanced things that we could do, we might pass that off to the insurance company to mitigate some of those risks just because of the cost and the sheer amount of time and changes it might take. So finding a company like Steve and Nick's company to come in and build that program and that plan of actions and milestones to get to that point is paramount. So even a third-party assessment is great. Trust but verify and see what else you can be doing, along that path to maturity.
And Patrick back there is asking for one final question, and then we have to move on.
Not a question, just super quick. I'm property and casualty licensed. I am not appointed. I have nothing to sell you. What I want to do is just throw some weight to this. I had a cyber policy. I was appointed with a carrier. The scope of this discussion makes it sound like it's a massive deal, but actual coverage can start at a very reasonable cost. Like we're talking low hundreds potentially if you're a solo operator. So $25 a month to wrap up this problem is right? That's not overwhelming. So don't let the scope of the discussion deter you from gathering the information. If you have a larger operation, it may sound like an overwhelming project and you're gonna go, I'll deal with that next month. Don't, just give your broker a call.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I would like to say thank you, Nick and Steve, for coming. Is there anything you guys would like to say to wrap up? Anything about your personal relationship with Jesus Christ that you'd like to kind of state or say? And then after that, we're inviting Fred up for a few minutes. He has an incredible testimony to our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, and what he did for him that he'd like to share with everyone before we wrap up our sessions.
Well, I'd just like once again to thank everybody for the opportunity to speak up here. It's very important to me, and this group is important to me. I really appreciate that we're able to come together. So I would like to just give a quick testimony for what God has done for me in my business. When I started the Callisto Group, I knew the technical, I knew the tools, I knew how to rub elbows and get in the room and talk to people. What I didn't know was how much I was going to rely on God to see me through the tough times in business. During COVID, when clients dried up and nobody wanted to do business, during every political shift that's happened, where we don't know 1 minute to the next what business is going to look like, and being able to trust in God that if I put my faith in Him, that my business will continue to prosper, and it has done so. Through COVID, we not only survived, but we thrived. Through all of the challenges, it has been a great matter of faith and having staff and employees and business partners that we could share that faith with and help each other through accountability and through camaraderie in Christ to stick together, to stick to the plan, and to see it through to success. So thank you.
Yeah, I would say for myself and how my faith impacts business is growing up, I was always really interested and involved in apologetics, and I've always had a love for theology and especially systematic theology. And I was never forced to work with my dad, but he saw that in me and that just how my mind works, especially with apologetics, and if there's X and there's Y, and insurance tends to be pretty similar. If situation A happens, coverage B will respond. And so he encouraged me to get involved in the business. And so just taking that from my faith of how do we really articulate what we believe and why. And I try to take that and help my clients the same way of, what coverages should you have and why, and to be able to explain that in a way that's palatable. And hopefully I did that today. I know it was a lot, but and just similar to what Steve said, I don't know how you could go through life without having a rock to lean on. Life is tough, business is tough, problems happen, money squeezes happen, but without a rock to lean on, you're pretty barren out there, and it's tough. So having Jesus Christ is the foundation of all that we do in business. It gives you enough wind in your sails to keep going. It's like going to church on Sunday. You come, you hear the word, you partake in the sacraments, and it gives you enough to go through the week and battle against darkness. So.
Thank you so much, guys. Would everybody give a round of applause?